Okay. So we have 40,000 dollars, and let's say here I write my name, Shivansh, and I want the user to get here. So firstly, I will make an element, and I will enclose this Shivansh inside the span element, and I will give it an ID of, let's say, name. So if I want to navigate the user to here, so I can write click here. So click here is inside of the anchor tag, so it will act as a hyperlink. And inside of this, uh, here, since it is an ID, so we will put this hashtag symbol, and then the ID was name. Okay, and let's open it with live server. It's loading. Okay, so as soon as I click here, okay, let's give it a color so that we can see my name. Color of it. So yeah, here is my name. So it navigated me to this span which had the ID of name. Okay, and in the URL also you can see that the URL has changed to hash name. So index.html was the file, and inside that it is hash name. Okay, so yeah, this is there's not much in page navigation. So next topic we have is CSS specificity. Okay, so let me remove this. Let me comment that out so that you can see that. Let's say I have a paragraph tab with some dummy text, and here I specify color to be red. Let's count this out. And I give it an ID, a class of p1 and ID of, let's say, para1. So for now you can see that it's red colored. Okay, but suppose I declare define the color property with a class name as, let's say, yellow. So now you can see that yellow is not visible, so let's say green. So now you can see that it turned to green, right? Because if you, okay, in VS Code, if you hover over a selector, you can see that the selector specificity is 0 comma 0 comma 1, and its specificity is 0 comma 1 comma 0. Okay, so class has more specificity, or like if you define same property with different values in uh, the with less to a tag to the selector with less specificity and to a selector with higher specificity. So the one with higher specificity will its property will be applied. Okay, so as you can see, and let us have the para one. So now you can see that its specificity is 1 comma 0 comma 0, which is more than that of class. Okay, so if I define something in here, let's say color to be purple, so it will be purple now. So the ID, like whatever property you define inside of a highest specificity selector, it will override the other properties which are defined in less specific in the selectors with less specificity. Okay, so that's it. And you can overwrite the ID as well if you add inline CSS. Okay, so the highest priority is given to inline CSS. So if I write color to be uh, yeah, so now you can see it's not purple, like it overrides the ID as well. So and we also have universal selector, right? And its specificity is 0. Okay, so if you use any of these selectors, it will any of the selectors will override the universal selector because it has the lowest specificity of 0. Okay, so that's for specificity. And there is one more thing. Let's say I have style.css. Let me link that link. Okay, chat. Okay, so if I have I'm linking the CSS. Okay, so uh, let's comment this out for now. Okay, so this is how we comment out CSS. Okay, so let's say I have I defined paragraph color to be violet. Look at this. Okay, let's remove the inline CSS as well. So now you can see it's violet. Okay, and then okay, let's first define it inside of the external CSS. So let's define it as maybe yellow. So you can see it's yellow. But if I define it inside of my document, inside the internal CSS, and make the color as, let's say, green. So you can see now the color is green. Okay. So and if I define some inline CSS, let's say maybe the okay color is red. Okay, so now you can see that the inline CSS is overwriting the internal CSS as well. So highest priority is given to the inline CSS. Then we have the internal CSS, and least priority is given to external CSS. Okay, and if you want to change the order, okay, so if you want this yellow color to be applied instead of this red and green color, so you can add this exclamation important. Okay, so which means that it will now this will not follow the rule of specificity, or so now the color will be yellow. Okay, but it is not recommended to use exclamation important because it breaks the rules of CSS, and uh, it's not a good, like suppose a month after this, like you wrote is important, and after that you are trying to change it and it's not changing, so it may create a lot of confusion and it's not a good practice. So just avoid using. You can only use it in case, like if you are using some internal external CSS like bootstrap or tailwind, and you want to overwrite any of the property, any of their predefined property, a CSS property. So in that case, you can use exclamation important. Otherwise, avoid. Okay. So we did CSS specificity. We did this as well. Okay. Pseudo classes. Okay. So let me comment this out. So okay. Pseudo classes. Okay. So let me have an anchor with, let's say, click here, and input tag as well. Input. Okay. So let's first do it with input. There is, okay. So pseudo classes, what they do is that they define a specific state of an element. So let's say we have focus. So whatever, let's say I do background color as red. So whatever CSS we will define within this will be applied to this element only if it is in this state. Okay. So when it is in focus, then only this CSS property will be applied. So as you can see, the background red is not there, but as soon as I click over it and now it's in focus because now I can write anything. So that's why the color is changed. And as soon as I click in the like outside of it, now it's no longer in focus. So the background is to the default one, which is white. Okay. So this is a focus. Then we have hover. What hover? So focus. I hope you all understand what focus means, right? When you are clicking over it and like it's in focus. And what hover means is that when you are hovering over it, which means let me demonstrate it. Background color. Okay. So hover means taking your mouse over that element. So if I take my mouse over this, you can see I'm not clicking over it. As soon as I click over it, it is becoming focused, right? So the color is changing. But if my mouse is over it, then it's the hover properties will be applied, which is this background color as cyan. Okay, so we did hover, focus, then we have anchor. So if you have anchor and which is mm, active, we will make its color to be blue. No, not blue, green. Okay, and what active means is that if you are clicking over it, so I'm pressing I'm holding the mouse and I'm pressing it. I'm not release the button, so it's active because I've clicked over it. But as soon as I release my mouse, now it's not active. So that CSS property is not applied. Okay, so this is active. Then I guess we have visited. So since we have visited this page, like I clicked over it, that's why it is green. Okay, and yeah, actually, I've included this link. If you go to the WFE schools, here is a list of all the pseudo. I will not be covering all of them, but there are a lot of pseudo elements. Okay. Yeah, I will be covering the NX child one because it is important. Then there is disabled MD, a lot of them. So let's have, suppose I have 6 paragraph tags and I have some intermediates, 20, maybe 4. Okay. Let's make it black. Okay, so now you can see that uh, here we have 6 paragraphs. Now, this nth child, what it does is that it chooses, here you can specify any number, let's say 2. So choose it will choose the second paragraph. So nth child means second child. Okay, so the CSS which I will write in here maybe background color as red. This CSS property will be applied to the second paragraph. Okay, so second paragraph. working. Just a second. Okay, I hope you all are familiar with DevTools. If that property is not good, not getting applied. Okay, let's have one. It's also not working. Why? Let's have it inside of some div. Because of that, um, this usually doesn't happen. Okay, so yeah, now you can see that it's getting applied to this paragraph. So I don't know why it was not working initially. I will find that out. Oh yeah. So paragraph was not a child; it was a root element within the paragraph within the document. That's why init child was not working. I'm so sorry about that. So, but now as we have added this div, so now it's a child. Okay. So what this means is that inside of the div there is some paragraph, and the first child will have color as red. Here, okay, and uh, as compared like in the Python or C++, like the indexing is from 0, but in CSS we have it from 1. Okay, so you can have 2, and there is one more property as even, so it will apply this property to all the even elements, like even what should I say, even nth element. Okay, you understand, second, fourth, sixth. Okay, so like that, and it can be odd. So yeah, that's it. You can have even, odd, or any number inside of it. And that's a child. And I guess that's it for pseudo classes. Next, we will be moving on to pseudo elements. Okay. So for pseudo elements, let me comment this out. Let's have a div with some text. Okay, and we can maybe suppose. Okay, here it is. So with pseudo elements, what we can do, okay, so the difference between pseudo elements and pseudo classes is that we define pseudo elements with a single colon, so as you can see here, and for pseudo elements we have two of them, and then we can write, let's say, first letter, and we can have their font size to be, let's say, 30 pixel. So in newspapers you must have seen, like, and even in some articles, the first letter is like this, so you can do it using first letter. So it helps us to select a specific, like you can also have first line, a specific content of a of a element. So now the first line is 30 pixel, as you can see. So that's first line, first element. Then you can also have before. Okay, so what before does is that, okay, so to make before work, first what we need to do is to add some content. It is necessary to add content. Okay, so if you don't want any content, you can leave this string as blank, or else you can add something like this is this. Okay, so now you can see this was my original div, but with the help of this before pseudo element, I added this before my div, and similarly there is after. So now it will be added after the div. So here it is. This is a div. Okay, so this is a div after, before, and then we also did first element, first line, first letter. So that's it for pseudo elements. Next we have display property. Okay, display property is, okay, charts, putting table body, and yeah, that will work. Yeah, Okay, so in case you have any question, you can just unmute yourself. Okay, because I'm not able to read the chat. So now we will be doing. Let's comment these. Okay, is there? Okay, comment this out as well. So now we will be doing display property, and it's really important. So watch it carefully. And div, let's say height to be 200 pixel, and width also to be 200 pixel. Okay, let's make it 700 pixel. Um, and let's add the background to the screen. Okay, so there are, and for div, inside of div, we will have height as, let's say, um, 100 pixel, and width also as 100 pixel, and background color will be blue. Okay, so for each div, we will be having different background colors. So what we can do is we can have an child as 1, 2, 3. Okay, and let's have the background color as red for this one, blue for this one, and yellow for this one. And okay, I see. Okay, now it's okay. So here we have a large div, which is the parent div, and inside that we have three child divs, which are red, blue, and yellow in color. So suppose I want to move this div 20 pixel from the left. So you may say we can add margin 20 margin left as 20 pixel. So if I do margin left as 20 pixel, so it will work. But actually this margin is also a part of this element. So if I want to remove this element, like I don't want this 20 pixel of this blank space to be this element, so in that case we can use the position property. Okay, so let's start with position relative. Okay, so position, by default the position property has a value static. Okay, so but as soon as we uh, write it as relative, so the position will not change. The position will be same, but what we can do now is that we can define the left, right, top, and bottom properties. So if I say left as 20 pixel, so it will move 20 pixel from the left. Okay, and if I open the dev tool, okay, now you can see that this element is only this much. This 20 pixel blank space is not a part of this element. Okay, but in case of margin, it was. We already covered box size, box sizing. Sorry, box model. So you would be knowing that. And top 10 pixels. So you can, now it has moved 10 pixels from the top and 20 pixels from the left. And then I can write bottom as 30 pixel. Now, when I write bottom as 30 pixel, it will overwrite this top as 10 pixel because you can have only top or bottom. Okay, so okay, yeah, so it has moved. I guess I should write this important. Is it not efficient? Let's have 100 pixel. Let's comment this out. Okay, because of top, it was not okay. So if you are defining, either you can keep top or bottom. Okay, use any one of them. So now you can see that it moved 100 pixel from the bottom. Let's keep it as 20 pixel. So, and similarly, you can have right, right as maybe 20 pixel. So it has moved 20 pixel from right. Okay, so this is top, right, left, and bottom. Uh, so now you can see that it is moving with respect to its original position, which was its original position was static. So it was moving with respect to that. But if you want it to move with respect to, let's say, this whole document, so in that case, you can have this as absolute. So what this will do is that it is okay. So in case of static, oh sorry, in case of relative, the element was inside of the parent element, and it was reserving its space. But as soon as you define the position as absolute, what it is doing is that it is moving out of the parent element and it is occupying the space inside of the whole document. Okay, so now this right and bottom is with respect to this whole page. Okay, so you can also have top and this can be left. So yeah, you can, it is understandable, right? But suppose I want to move this element with respect to the position of its parent element. Okay, so let's keep it as right and bottom. So in that case, what you can do is you can define this div. Okay, so let me do one thing, body and child one. And here we can have position as absolute. So I can put it at, let's not work with NHR because I don't really use that. So I'm not familiar with it. Let's have an ID of div one. Okay, so inside of div one, I will make its position as absolute. So what will happen is that now you can see this square is, if I remove this, now it's aligning itself with respect to the whole document. But as soon as I declare the position as absolute of the parent element, now it's aligning itself with respect to the position of the parent element, right? So any, okay, so let me write what are the position values. So position can be static, which is by default. It can also be relative. It can be absolute, and it can be fixed, and it can be sticky. These are the ones which we will be covering today. Okay, so if the position of parent element is anything other than static, so if it is static, then it will not work. But if it is anything other than static, like relative, absolute, fixed, or sticky, then this absolute element will align itself with with respect to that of the parent element. Okay, so if okay, here it is. If I write it as 50 pixels, so it is moving 50 pixels with respect to its parent element because the position of parent element is absolute. Okay, so this is absolute. Then suppose I want to keep this parent element as absolute, but I want this child element to be placed with respect to this whole document. Because as soon as I write this, it is a this position absolute child element is aligning itself with respect to the parent element. So in that case, you can use position as fixed, and let's make this stop. Okay, so now you can see that even though the parent element is absolute, if the position is fixed, then the element is aligning itself with respect to the whole document. And there is one more thing, like this element will be like this whole time. Like I'm scrolling down, then also this element is fixed. Okay, so like you can see the left squares are moving, they are going away, but this is fixed. So that's position fixed. There is one more one. There is one more which is sticky. Oh, sticky. What it does is that it is mixture of relative and fixed. Okay. So what it will do is that it will have position of static. Like in if you define it as relative, then also it will have the position of static. So it will have the position of static initially, but as soon as you will reach this point, now it will be a mixture of fixed and relative. So now you can see that it is fixed. Like I scroll, let me add some text also. Lauren 200. So even though I'm scrolling down, oh, because of position absolute, let me find this out. Okay, so even though I'm scrolling down, this position is fixed, and so that is sticky. So any doubt so far? Okay, chat. We have got it now. We are putting table. Okay, so I guess there are no doubts. So let's move on. So these were the position properties, and then we have overflow property. Okay, so in here, okay, let's take this p tag only. So if I define the height of this p tag to be, let's say, 200 pixels, and its width to be 200 pixels, and let's give it a background color of violet. So you can see here is our paragraph tag, but the content within it is overflowing, right? So there are many ways to solve this. We can what we can do is we can use the overflow property and assign it as overflow as hidden. So what this will do is that it will hide all of the content which is overflowing. So you can see only this much text, but the rest of the text which was overflowing is gone. Okay, let me comment this out. Okay, so this is hidden, so it will hide all of the overflowing content. Next, what we have is scroll. So what scroll will do is that it will add this scrolling bar. So now you can scroll through it and read the text. But the problem with scroll is that suppose I remove this content. Like it's not a problem if you want scroll bar, then you can set the overflow as scroll. But now I'm only like there is no overflowing text right now because I'm having only this much text. But then also this scroll bar is there. So if I want the scroll bar only if there is some overflowing content, so for then what I can do is that I can give the value of overflow as auto. So you can see now there is no scroll bar, but if let's say I add 100 more words. Now it automatically adds this toolbar. Okay, so that's okay. And by default, it is visible. So what visible means is that the overflow will be visible. Like if I don't define this overflow property, then by default it will be visible. Okay, so that's overflow. Now we are starting with CSS animation. So you can just comment this out and let's have a div inside of which, okay, we will only have a div. But let's do one thing. Okay. Any predefined, let me comment this out. So this is commented. There is no other. Okay, now it's a blank tag with no CSS. So let me add height as 200 pixel and width as 200 pixel, and then a background color of, let's say, medium. So now you can see that this is my div. Now suppose I want to animate this div. So first of all, I will have to tell CSS that what the animation is. Either I want to make it move or resize it or do something else. So first we need to define what the animation is. So for that, there is a keyword keyframe and the identifier, which means name. What's the name of the animation? So let me example maybe. And in here, what? Okay, so you can have either from. So this will be really simple, from and to. So you can have background color as there initially, and then it will become green. Oh no, let's say blue. And if I say animation of, let's say, animation, okay, no problem. Example. Okay, if I do this, okay, it will not work because there is few other things which we need to specify, which is the duration of the animation, which will be 1 second. Then we can have, then we will have, just a second, there was a snippet for this. Okay, remember what it is. Uh, Animation. Okay, so I guess what was that? Let us see. Okay, so the shorthand is animation name, then animation duration, then okay. I will explain what it means later, but let's first understand what how the animation works. 0 seconds and then infinite alternate. Okay. So you can see that. Okay, let me increase this duration. Let's say 2 seconds. So you can see that there is some animation, like it's the background color is changing from red to blue. Okay, so this 2 seconds is the duration of the animation. So let me add something like margin left to be, since you have done absolute element, so I will be using left as right as 0, right as 0, and top, okay, and top will be 0, and left will be 0, and bottom will be 0. And to make it work, we need to use the position property and make it absolute. Okay, so you can see there is some animation happening. Okay, so with now you are only telling from where to start and where to end. But what you can do is that you can instead write what will be the CSS property at 0%, will which means at 0 second. Then at 50%, which means at the first second, it will be the right will be 50 or 500 pixel. Then top will be 500 pixel, and the background color can be green. Okay, and 100%. Okay, so now you can see the animation. Okay, let me decrease this to 20. And it's really absurd. Let me do one thing. Let's only deal with left and right. Okay, let's not take top and bottom. So left will be initially 0, then it will be 100 pixel, right, and then 0. Okay, and to make, if you want to make the animation smooth, then what you can do is you can add at, let's say, 25%, and now the left, let's say, will be 100 pixel. This can be 75%. Okay, so if you want to make it really smooth, then you can add, like, you know how to add this. So actually what you can do is now left, now it will be super smooth, 500 pixel and 700 pixel. This will be left. Okay, so now it's smooth because I was changing the whole of the property like from left to right. That's why it was not able to animate. But if you use the same property like left, 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 then it will be able to animate like this. So that's animation. You can even resize it. Let's say height will be 200 pixel. Okay, what was it initially? Okay, it was initially 200 pixel. So yeah, then we can increase the height and width by, let's say, 50 pixel. Then again by 50 pixel. Again by 50 pixel, which will make it 300 pixel, and then 350. So now you can see that the size is increasing, then it's decreasing. Okay, so now let's talk about what this means, this line. So example is the name of the animation. Then this 2 second is the duration of the animation. Then what linear means is that uh, what should be the speed of the animation. Like linear means that it will be constant throughout the animation. So here you can define what the speed should be. Like should it be more in the starting, or like should the animation be smooth at the end? So you can define it using this. Then we have 0 seconds. So this 0 second means what delay I want. So if I do it 2 seconds, then the page will load. After 2 seconds, the animation will start. Okay, so this is 2 seconds. What infinite means is that how many times will the animation be, how many times the animation should do, occur. So it's happening once and twice. So it happened once and twice. So after that, it will stop. But what infinite means is that it will keep on going. And next we have alternate. So what alternate means is that what should be the direction of the animation. So if I do it forwards, so it will complete the animation at will, and it will start from the starting. Okay. And if I do it backwards, then what will happen is that it will start from the end, and it will do it like that. But if we do it alternate, then it will be a really smooth animation. It will, yeah. Now it's alternate, so it's happening both ways. So uh, uh, it is completing it once, and then it's again starting. So that's what it means to be alternate. So the first is the name of the animation, then we have the time or duration of the animation. Then this shows what the speed should be. So linear means that it will be constant throughout the animation. This tells what the delay should be. This tells how many times should the animation happen, and this tells what the like how the animation should occur. Like should it be forwards or backwards? And alternate means that it will happen both ways. So first forwards, then backwards. So that gives a smoothing effect. So we generally use alternate. And yeah, and actually this is actually I'm not having any ideas what kind of animation I can show you. But actually, if you go to, let's say, CodePen.io, there you can see, like you can play with the background, like not background, but background, let's say gradients. Like if you apply gradient background, then you can play with that. Then you can have animation. Then you can play with margin padding. So that will give a really good effect. Let's say this one. Few of them can be really advanced, like it can few of them can include some JavaScript libraries, but I guess this one is simple one. So he's playing with he has applied the box shadow behind this image, and then he's just playing with the position. I guess he has. Let me see. Okay, it's really long CSS. Let's not get into it. But basically, you can do that. You can have this floating effect if you make it relative, and then change the top and bottom top, or like initially it will be top 0, then top 10, top 20, top 30, and like that. Okay. Okay, so it's good. And finally we have the index. Let's stop this. Actually, let me comment this whole part. Okay, So we have this div, and let's say I have another div, and inside of this, the divs will be. Let me do one thing. Um, this will be div one, and this will be div two. So first of all, we will be having few of the common properties. Let's say width will be 200 pixel, and height will be 200 pixel, and background color. Okay, so background color will be different. So for that, I will use ID selector, and background color. Let's see, will be, yeah, for this, and for the other one, we can have it as, let's say, black. Okay, so here are our two divs. And what Z index does is that it helps us stack elements. Like you can assign the layer of an element. So it's a bit like it's difficult to explain. So let me just show you how it works. So you can have position. Okay, Z index only works with non-static position values. Like if the position is anything other than static, let's say we have relative, then the index will work. So now I can have top, no, bottom as, let's say, 200 pixel. So it will make it something like this. So this black, let's make it 180 pixel. So this black div is on top of this blue div. Okay. So what we can do is that with the help of Z index, so by default, the value of Z index is 0. So we can define it as -1. So now you can see that this black div has gone behind this blue div. So it helps us to put elements in layers. So I can also add something like left as 20. So yeah, so you can make something like this, some card effect kind of a thing with these things, and you can do pretty much like you can do a lot of things with the help of the index. But this is just an example, so you can make uh, such cards with the help of this like shadow kind of a thing to give it a kind of 3D effect. So that is C index. So suppose I have it as -1, but you can have it as positive. So initially it was this black div was above this blue div. So I can change this by making the C index of the blue div as 1. So by default, the Z index of this div2 was 0, and since the Z index of div1 was 1, which is greater than 0, hence it was above the black div, and it can be any value, like it should be greater than, if this is C index as, let's say, 100. So if it is 99, then it will not work. But if it is 101, then it will work. Okay, so that's what the index is. So I guess we covered everything. We did animation. Okay, so this animation part, I will try to come up with a good idea. Actually, this part was to be covered by Gaurav, so I didn't think of it. But uh, I will in next session. I guess Gaurav will cover this like with a good example. And yeah, we did this display properties, pseudo elements. I guess we covered everything. So any doubts or related to this session? Okay, yeah. We can change opacity. Actually, you can do a lot of things. You can change the position, opacity. Then you can also play with borders and padding, and maybe what else, font size and things like that. No doubts. Okay. Also, there are like all the CSS properties are not. Okay, I wanted. There are two topics left. Okay, that was not a part of presentation, but one thing is that using multiple classes. Okay, so let's say I have a class with name border. So what this does is that it adds like all the elements with this class will have a border of 2 pixel solid black, and then I have a class, let's say text, and the font size of this will be 20 pixel. So uh, for this example, like for explanation, we are only having one property each, so we can easily make a third. If suppose, let's comment this out. Suppose I have a button. Okay, we didn't do button, right? So I can have uh, span, let's say, and inside of it is some text. Okay, so suppose I want the properties of this class as well as this class. So for now, we only have single properties for this class, but suppose we have 20 properties, CSS properties declared within this class and 20 in this. So what we can do, like we can create a third class for this element, but what will be easier is that class will be, okay, this was border, and you can separate multiple classes with the help of space. So this is border, and then we have text. Okay, so now you can see that the font size has changed to 40 pixel, no, 20 pixel, and there is a border of 2 pixel black. Okay, so this is how you use uh, multiple classes. And another thing is that we did a hover effect, right? So let's say I want to add hover effect to this paragraph. So I want, no, this was span, sorry, span hover. So let's say I want to make change the color to, let's say, green. Uh, Green, suppose white, and the background color will be black. Okay. So now what will happen is that if I hover over it, so it's looking kind of absurd, right? Because as soon as I hover over it, it is changing to black and white. Okay. So what we can add is that we also have a sorry, we also have transition property. So this was not a part of the session, but I guess it will be, it will help you make website more presentable. So 1 second, and let's, so this is like the one we had. Ease in will make it, or will ease the start, like it will start with, it will have a smoothing effect at the starting, but the ending will be quite fast. So that is ease in. Similarly, you have ease out, but I prefer keeping it just ease. So now you can see that there is some transition effect over it, right? So if you are using hover effect, then you most probably will be using transition as well, because without it, uh, It is looking quite absurd. Okay, so that was transition over, and yeah, I guess that's it. Okay, so let me check the chat. No doubts, no doubts. Okay. Any further doubts, like with transition or anything which you did, like maybe something related to your project or which we covered in the previous sessions? Anything? Oh, okay. So let me stop the record. Stop sharing.